Hello friends, I have made a video recently about what are the critical management lessons that we can learn from the Zelensky-Trump saga. And that video actually became very popular, very famous. And I got a request from few of our audience, few of our viewers to create some other learning video, which is about the communication skills. What are the learning that we can make from effective, from this saga, and understand how we can implement the communication skills and various aspects of the communication skills. What are the key learnings? And those are the things that I'm going to cover. In fact, I'm going to talk about 5 key learnings that I want to talk about today. And the first communication skill that we learned from the Zelensky-Trump saga is the power of active listening. Power of active listening. Why this is so important? Now let's go back to that 7-minute clip between Zelensky and Trump. You see, what was happening here is that Trump was talking something and Zelensky was only hearing it, not listening to it. There is a distinction between hearing and listening. You can hear it, but are you understanding what is going on? Are you making your mind? Therefore, listening is a much more active word. And if you're listening to the conversation that President Trump is making, then President Zelensky should get some ideas of handling how this situation will deviate from the real motives. And if Zelensky was listening this actively and understanding it effectively, making his plans while he's listening, rather than erupting into some sort of an outburst, it's like this: since you're not listening, you're not saying what I wanted you to say, therefore I don't want to talk to you. It become like that. So instead of that kind of outcome, if President Zelensky was listening effectively, then he would have actually, especially this is whole thing is happening in front of the whole world. The entire media was lined up. There was live streaming going on. Everybody, millions and millions, probably billion people saw this whole incident happening live. And therefore, it was very important for both the president. I'm not saying only Zelensky, but in this case, Zelensky, which is Ukraine, is the affected party. Therefore, he should be listening to what the president is saying. And you know what he was saying? He is saying that first announce the ceasefire, then we will talk about what needs to be done. You want to negotiate, right? So we will come to the negotiation, which is also a communication skill. We will talk about that. But effective listening is not only hearing things, it is effective listening. That is a word that I want to emphasize. The leaders and all the leaders, whether you are a CEO or you are of your team, or even if in this case leader of the countries, political leaders, they have to have this very important quality of effective listening. And this is exactly the lesson number 1 that we learn from this conversation of 7 minutes between Zelensky and Trump. Let's move to the second one. The second one is importance of clear communication. Importance of clear communication. Prior to coming to this meeting, did these two gentlemen have clear ideas what is that they are going to talk about in public? Because both of these parties are coming for a joint statement. That means something must have transpired between them behind closed doors. They must have agreed on certain things. They must have said, okay, we are now stepping out. We are going to address journalists and various media houses outside who are waiting with their live camera feed and live streaming feed, etc. So logically both of these parties would have decided something that they would talk. And that is why both of these presidents came out and they invited the journalists, certain key journalists, to Oval Office, and they wanted to make a press briefing. So when the briefing started, it turned out to be a totally mismanaged, a botched up communication. That means something must have gone wrong from what they discussed behind the closed doors, and when they came out in public, it was not agreed upon. What was being said is did not agree upon. So the second lesson that we learn is clear communication. So did they communicate clearly behind the closed door when they were inside? What happened? We actually don't know what happened behind the door, closed doors, but did they communicate with each other? So clarity in communication is very important, especially when you're a leader. You are communicating with your team or you're communicating with your prospects or client. It has to be crystal clear, no room for any ambiguity. If you leave it room for ambiguity, then that can be translated into thousand ways. It may change the meaning of what you're saying. So clarity in communication is one big lesson that we learn from this particular conversation between President Trump and President Zelensky, and that 7 minute saga that actually happened between them. Let's move on to the third point. The third point is about understanding the value of emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is also very critical for leaders to understand. You see, certain things are very, very close to the heart. For example, let me throw an example. Some people are very close to Microsoft, but other people are close to using Google platforms. And both of these parties may be very loyal to, respectively, to Microsoft or Google. And if you are a Microsoft fan and user, then you would like to provide very emotional backing to the product offering from Microsoft, and you don't want to talk about Google at all. And same thing will happen towards the Google users. The Google users will be completely loyal to the Google technologies, don't want to talk about Microsoft. And there are certain people who are in between. So when it comes to emotional value, emotional backing of your issues, then as a leader, you know that there are differentiations, there are polarization happening in the field in front of you. People can be very polarized, either this way or that way or highway. So you have to understand as a leader, and therefore you should not allow any ambiguity because of the emotional intelligence creep into what you are saying. Now, in this case, between Zelensky and Trump, obviously both parties are emotional about something. Zelensky is emotional about his country. Trump is emotional about bringing peace to the world. And Trump is also emotional about saving the taxpayer money. So both parties are very emotional. And this brings the previous point. Did you communicate clearly among each other before you came in front of the press? And obviously it looks like they did not communicate. There was a definitely communication gap. And both parties are very, very, very highly emotionally affected. Both have certain deliverables promised back home to their citizens, to their loyalists. And there was no way they could have compromised on those emotional values. And therefore, that created a whole lot of scenario which actually happened in front of all of us. So the third lesson that we learn is understanding the value of emotional intelligence. We have to have emotional intelligence in terms of understanding what other person is trying to see, because this issue can be very important for other person. So if you don't compromise, don't understand and then compromise, there is no win-win for any party. And this is exactly what has happened. Absolutely zero result from Zelensky and Trump meeting. In fact, the meeting itself was counterproductive for the cause of stopping the war. Let's move on to the fourth point. The art of strategic negotiations. The art of strategic negotiation. You see, what was happening here is Trump was saying that first announce a ceasefire, and then we will talk about other strategic issues. You have lost land, you have lost certain pieces, you have lost Crimea, you have lost manpower, you have lost revenue, and you have also lost a lot of business, global business. We will talk about these things because these are all strategic issues. And even Russia lost many things. US lost $370 billion of taxpayers' money. So everybody lost it. And there are strategic issues for every party. For Europe, there is a strategic issue. Germany is completely dependent on the Russian gas. So Ukraine cannot work in isolation. So likewise, no other country can work in isolation. Therefore, there is a strategy that is involved here. So strategic negotiation needs to be done. There was a need for a strategic negotiation. There was a need for a clear communication. There was a need for a understanding. And if you do not have understanding, that means you have not negotiated. It looked like that Zelensky and Trump, they have not even discussed any issue, or even if they have discussed, they have not agreed upon, right? They, both of them, do not respect their emotional issues. Both of them have not clearly communicated, and therefore it turned out that when they came in front of the public, the whole Pandora's box was open, and they actually argued, they, short of saying names to each other, but they actually schooled each other. There was argument, and whole lot of discussion happened between them, and therefore strategic negotiation did not happen. Now the lesson is very, very clear. If you want to communicate with your clients, with your employees, with your prospect, if you are in negotiations, you must understand all the prior points which are part of the effective communication, and then you will be empowered to do a strategic negotiation. Now, the last point is the ethical decision making. You see, when you go for any discussion or any negotiations, outcome is not known before the discussion, right? You go with your points, but you're also, as I said in the first point, listening. You are active listener. You are open to listen to other people, other persons' point of view also. And then you are basically saying that, look, there has to be a middle path, because whatever you have in mind, the other person do not agree to the whole thing. And likewise, vice versa. Unless both parties agrees and there is win-win for both of them, there is no way that discussion is going to come out in a positive manner. So the whole point is the ethical decision making is important. That means you don't look at only your interest. If you want to close a deal, you want to close a discussion, you have to also look at the other person's point of view also, other person's interests, other person's challenges, and then there has to be a middle path. You have to let go something, the other person will have to let go something, and then you meet at a middle path, and that is the ethical decision making. Ethically, you don't only look at your interest, you look at the interest of the society. Now, in this case, what has happened? Both parties are only looking at their interest, and therefore there was no negotiations, there was no middle path, and there was no win-win. In fact, it was loss for everybody. So these are the 5 points that on which Zelensky and Trump discussion. I'm not saying the leaders failed, the discussion flopped. The discussion did not had any result. And now we hear that Zelensky has agreed for ceasefire in front of the European leaders. The European leaders do not matter, because in any case, Ukraine was not getting any support from European leaders. And even if they were getting support, it was more or less negligible, and it was in the realm of moral support. The real support in terms of armament and money and everything was coming from the United States of America. So, I mean, you say whatever you want to say, but this discussion between US and Ukraine was the utter failure because of these 5 things that I talked about. The leaders did not discuss these 5 things. They did not, listen carefully. They did not respect each other. There was no ethical decision making, and much more. So friends, I would like to know what you think. Do you agree on all these 5 points? And I will be more than eager to know what is your opinion. If you have any other point, please feel free to send across as a form of the comment, and I will read it out in my next stream. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.